The Threxil did not have a word for mother. They had no need for one. Their young were not raised by individuals. They were processed, maintained, and advanced through developmental stages by assigned care groups. No single Threxil claimed responsibility for a juvenile. No single Threxil formed attachment. That system had functioned without deviation for over 9,000 cycles, until a human janitor found something that was supposed to be dead and refused to leave it behind. From the archives of the Kindled Quill, the incident occurred aboard a multi-species research vessel operating under joint exploration protocols. Among its crew were members of the Threxil species, recognized across the galaxy for their precision, efficiency, and emotional neutrality. Threxil juveniles were raised in brood clusters, identified only by designation, brood numbers, hatch order, nothing more. Individual identity was not assigned until after the second molt, when a juvenile became fully independent, what the Threxil referred to as solo viable. Until that point, the individual was not considered relevant. At approximately 2 standard months, a brood would undergo its first molt. The process was controlled, predictable. Caretakers sealed the chamber and departed. Intervention was not required. Survival was assumed. Failure was acceptable. Following the event, maintenance crews were assigned to clear the discarded shells. One such crew member was a human named Jessie. Her duties were routine, unremarkable. She was there to clean the room. Nothing more. Jessie did not like the Threxil. Most humans didn't. There was nothing overtly threatening about them. They were not aggressive, not hostile. But their stillness, their lack of expression, the way they spoke in layered clicks, translated into flat, clinical language. It made people uncomfortable. Jessie preferred to keep her distance, which is why she almost missed it. The chamber was filled with discarded exoskeletal shells, piled in uneven clusters across the floor. She began clearing them methodically. Lift. Stack. Dispose. One of the shells shifted. Jessie paused. Looked at it. Waited. Nothing. She exhaled and reached down. The shell moved again. Not falling. Not sliding. Moving. Jessie froze. Then slowly, carefully, she pulled the upper layers aside. Beneath them, something twitched. A Threxil juvenile, partially molted, its outer shell incomplete, limbs unsteady. Movement weak, but unmistakably alive. Jessie stared at it for several seconds, then tapped her comm. "Maintenance to Threxil Care Division. I think you missed one." There was a pause before the response. "That unit is non-viable." Jessie frowned. "It's moving. It failed transition. It is no longer part of the brood." Jessie looked down again. The juvenile shifted weakly, one limb dragging against the floor. "So what happens to it?" There was no hesitation in the reply. "It is unassigned." Jessie didn't respond immediately, because she understood what that meant. Unassigned meant no one was coming. Jessie had spent most of her early life in a system not entirely unlike the Threxil brood structure. Rotating caregivers, shared resources, no one responsible for any one child for very long. Efficient, structured, impersonal. She had learned early what unassigned felt like. She looked at the juvenile again. It moved, slowly, blindly, alone. Jessie sighed. "Yeah, no." She reached down and picked it up. It was lighter than she expected. Warm. Fragile. "Maintenance is taking responsibility," she said into the comm. "That is unnecessary." "Yeah," Jessie muttered, already turning toward the door. "I'm doing it anyway." The Threxil did not intervene. By their logic, the juvenile was no longer part of their system. What happened to it next was irrelevant. The following weeks were not efficient. Jessie adjusted environmental controls manually. Too warm, too cold, too dry, too humid. She learned through trial, error, and observation. She talked to it, not because she expected a response, but because silence felt wrong. The juvenile stabilized. Slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. It molted. Late. Alone. Alive. Jessie sat back on the floor of the maintenance bay, staring at it. Exhausted. Relieved. Well, congratulations. The Threxil juvenile shifted, newly formed limbs testing their strength. Jessie tilted her head, studying it. Shelley. She let out a quiet breath. I guess we're family now. At 4 months, the juvenile completed its second molt. Against all projections. Against all expectations. It emerged fully formed. Independent. Solo. Viable. Initial communication attempts produced inconsistent translations. Primary survival anchor. Stability source. Designated care unit. The system recalibrated repeatedly as behavioral data accumulated. The final translation stabilized on a term the Threxil language had never required. Mother. Threxil Systems assigned it a designation. V946. It was, by all measurable standards, a success. An anomaly. A deviation requiring documentation. The Threxil recorded the biological irregularity. They analyzed the environmental variables. They updated their developmental models. Because it had not developed within their system. It had developed within hers. Weeks later, Jessie was finishing a routine systems check when she noticed a Threxil approaching. Its movements were precise, deliberate, unfamiliar in this context. It stopped in front of her, extended a limb. In its grasp, organic plant matter, arranged. Imperfectly. Jessie blinked. You bring me flowers? The Threxil inclined its head slightly. Designation, V946. Jessie stared at it for a moment, then shook her head. Yeah, that's not gonna stick. She gave a small, tired smile. Hey, Shelley. There was a brief pause. Then the Threxil spoke again. I have observed a human custom. It extended the flowers and a small data card. It is appropriate to acknowledge the primary caregiver. Jessie didn't move, didn't speak. The Threxil continued. Happy Mother's Day. Because when humans encounter something alone, something unassigned, they do not ask whose responsibility it is. They become the answer. And sometimes, that answer becomes something unexpected. A mother. Where there was never meant to be one.